Hello and welcome to Middlesex Moments, the radio show from Middlesex Community College in Middletown. I'm Steve Minkler, the Academic Dean and Lead Campus Administrator, and your host for these programs. As always, Middlesex Moments comes to you from the radio studios of the Center for New Media at Middlesex Community College on our main campus at 100 Training Hill Road in Middletown, Connecticut. And I'm really pleased to introduce my guest today is Dr. Michael Connor, the Superintendent of Schools for the City of Middletown. Thanks for coming, Michael.
Thank you, Steve, for having me.
And you're new to this position. You just started November 2017. What brought you to the superintendency of Middletown Schools?
Thank you for having me. First, I think what brought me here is the impact. In my previous capacity as Chief Academic Officer, we saw great academic and student gains. We were able to close the achievement gap by 1/3. And just to have that impact on roughly about 11,800 students, I wanted to take it to the next level and to be able to be the superintendent and have that impact in one of our Connecticut districts. So Middletown had opened up. It was a competitive process, very invigorating process for reflecting on my leadership practices and also what I can do more broadly to close the achievement gap, to provide equity in the context of academic programming for all students. So it's just a great opportunity to jump aboard and try to be a superintendent, and I want to begin the job.
All right.
Well,
and I know from talking from a couple of members of the Board of Education who were part of the search team that they were highly impressed with your mix of teaching background at several large districts, your role as the Chief Academic Officer in Norwalk, and the presentations that you made as part of your interview. You really dove deep into looking at things that you needed to address coming here as a new superintendent.
Yeah. I would say that, from an analytical context, really using high-level analytics and correlating that with systems change, redesigning or designing new elements within the organization. I feel that's an area that is a strong part in my leadership capacity. So being able to correlate both, usually you see experts or, individuals or practitioners that specialize in either one, data analytics or data mining, or two, systems development and change processes. And I feel that I have a good understanding of both and correlating the two for impactful change. So the presentations were, utilizing Middletown's data and what will be the change management processes to whether it be close the achievement gap, provide, equitable opportunities for all students, and also what can we do for innovation. And the interview, like I said, the interview process was invigorating, so it was a fun time.
Sure. Well, and I think a few people who might hear that might be a little critical by thinking that this sounds like a business approach to education, and education isn't a business. Yeah. What might you say to that?
I would say that it's inevitable. Corporate concepts have to be integrated into education because, again, you have to use data processes to be able to determine the impact of student learning, the impact of your systems that you put in place. And also, too, corporate America is an incubator of best practices that can be translated into the educational world. So I won't just look at it from just an isolated or a siloed manner, but how you can intentionally use or interface between the education world and the business world.
Right. Yeah, and the business world has brought us certain things like design thinking principles and other ways of looking at, as you said, a systems approach to how we look at our organizations, which are all built on people. Our product is the education and improving the lives of our students. Absolutely.
And, to actually deepen that alignment, when you look at, the units, I correlate the units being the principals having, the decision-making processes about what does production look like. And production is equivalent to student learning outcomes. So that's where you can see, how the business world interjects into the educational world. You have value propositions for, organizations that are developing strategic plans. In education, that's your theory of action and how that theory of action is going to drive change for systems improvement. So yes, I have a really traditional background in education, but also this entrepreneurial approach within education, using some of the corporate concepts with that.
Okay, great. Well, we have to take a quick break, and when we come back, we can explore a little bit more about what you see as the vision for the Middletown Public Schools and the partnerships you're trying to develop with places like Middlesex Community College and the businesses in our area. So stay tuned for more of Middlesex Moments. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College. This is Steve Minkler, and I've been speaking with Dr. Michael Connor, Superintendent of Schools for the City of Middletown, actually new to the city as of November 2017. And we were talking about looking at a systems approach to how do you run a large operation like a school district. And what are some of the opportunities you saw here in the city of Middletown that you could bring your level of expertise and analysis to?
Yeah, I think one, Middletown has a great organizational culture around kids. That's essential for any district to move forward, defined by whatever metric or however we want to be able to define what that standard is. Also, I think we have human capital that will be able to drive some of the initiatives that are going to be put forth. Within any organization, you have to look at or assess your capital as well as assess the capacity that's needed to carry that out. So I think that, we have a strong baseline in the context of where our capital is to be able to drive these initiatives in a coherent manner. And then also, too, I think that there's an expectation factor within Middletown Public Schools that I like. You can see some districts, whether it be from the national context or even at the state level, that you have to work on expectations for outcomes for students. And I think that collectively we have high expectations for our students, for our teachers, for our leaders as well. So if there's high expectations there, and the research says that, with the effect factor, that expectations and student advocacy is important. So if we continue to build that and focus on relationships, whether it be teacher-student, student-student, teacher-teacher, leader-teacher, that's essential for driving student achievement forward. And then, of course, being open and not oppositional to some of the organizational designs that we're going to be putting forward. Some of the initiatives they're adaptive in nature and requires a lot of sophistication to be able to adopt and implement some of these systems. But again, collectively, as you're building capacity, as you're starting to standardize coherence within the district, and then also, too, with the expectation factor, I think we'll be able to do some great things here.
Good. Well, and we were talking earlier about how some people might say this is a business-oriented approach to education and schools aren't a business, but but I think you were right in saying that there's a lot we can learn from business world, but also nonprofit world and other people who are, trying to figure out how best to manage an organization that does multiple things. So what's your approach to managing a system that is all based on people?
Absolutely.
And the relationships that you just described, you have to generate among different types of different students, faculty, students, and administrators. How does that all work in your mind?
Yeah, when you think about the science of management within an organization, implementing or designing specific constructs and elements can be the easy factor. But I think the hardest factor with this is developing trust with people. And you have to earn trust, to be able to implement high-level or meta designs that require some elements of trust and relationships, for that. So I think that once we establish true trust, we can provide all the resources within the science of the management. You can apply all the research and the theory behind it. But if you don't have stakeholders and leaders to trust the process and trust the direction that we're going in, and also have a culture that's underscored with relationships, then you're not going to move the organization forward. I always like to use the phrase that culture trumps strategy. And that's what, we're doing as of now, intentionally developing relationships and establishing that trust. So the strategy implementation would be much easier.
Yeah. I think one of the ways that you really articulated that quite well was in a document that represents your entry plan into the community and to the system. Describe what the key themes of that plan are.
Yeah, the themes for the entry plan is one, for me to understand the organization in totality. That's the science of management aspect of it, and using data and data metrics and high-level superintelligence to have a true understanding of where we are, just kind of like my internal needs assessment. Two is understanding my leadership. I have to know, how I'll be able to lead the organization based off of the data that was collected and analyzed. from the whole understanding the organization aspect of it, but more importantly, getting to know the community, establishing relationships such as Middlesex Community College, as well as other businesses within the community as well. Because again, I think it's this triangulation of the organization, community partners, as well as my leadership to be able to move the organization forward. So that was the premises of the entry plan, to really understand myself as well as the community that I'm entering.
Right. And as you said, we were actually one of the first
Absolutely.
community partners you wanted to meet. And why was that important to you, that you made a connection with Middlesex Community College? And I would guess also you would want a similar relationship with Wesleyan University
Absolutely.
here in town.
Absolutely.
Why was that important to you?
When you think about any type of innovation architecture that you're going to put in, you need extended partners. And to have Middlesex Community College as well as Wesleyan right in your backyard is just essential to develop these partnerships. And K-12 education has really focused on just the academic literacy component for students. And I think now when we start expanding those partnerships and really getting deep into strengthening them, we have to be able to develop civic and occupational literacy with our students. And adding those two dimensions into the academic programming or design for students, Middlesex Community College as well as Wesleyan will be able to provide those specific dimensions for students. So when you have Middlesex, when you have Wesleyan, and then Middletown Public Schools right in your backyard, all together working as a team to better promote specific programs and skills for our students, as well as the knowledge base as well. I mean, you have to. It's kind of like it's inevitable that you can't, or that you have to partnership with them. Yeah.
So I think what this represents is a way for the schools and the university and the college to help students find their authentic voice and to discover who they really are as people, as members of a community, members of a family, and members of a larger society, right?
Absolutely. That's huge when you think about the transformational process where we're empowering students. We're providing the necessary agency for them to give them a voice. For them to be the core drivers, or to be the lever to move in an area that they want to focus on. So it's all about personalization. And when you look at these extended partnerships and developing new architecture around student voice, it's just not your traditional approach of education where your teacher is disseminating information to the student. The student actually has a voice within his or her academic programming. And that's where that shared leadership component between the teacher and the student works really well. Now the teacher role becomes as a facilitator because we're empowering our students to be a part of the transformation, which you don't necessarily see in K-12 education. So this is a huge step in moving towards student-driven learning, student-driven instruction and pedagogy, and more importantly, empowering our cohorts to be the next voice in our society and to be contributing members within the community.
Right, absolutely. And it really makes them participants in their education more than just recipients.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of things that we in the college and university world can learn from our colleagues and in the K-12 system, because I think the whole nature of what it means to be a student has changed over time.
Absolutely. And, and it kind of goes back to what you said at the outset, having that business model or business concepts. But now when you look at the change, now students are going to be the key drivers for their own individual learning. And that's a major shift, a radical shift in education. We have to start looking at education from an economist point of view. How do we design our systems, and how do we facilitate teacher-student relationships, or even teacher-teacher relationships for meeting the demands of our economy, not just kind of a supply where we just develop traditional schools, traditional education and pedagogy where students are learning and receiving information. Whereas now we have to design our strategy around what is the demand. And the demand is, we have to look at what the economy is doing. We have a huge emphasis on manufacturing jobs. We have a huge emphasis that is in the medical field. And instead of just giving students just the academic content to be successful, we also have to provide the necessary skills to be able to, navigate through those specific professions. And that's where the new partnerships come in. And that's where Middlesex plays a part in that. That's where, hopefully we can extend that to Wesleyan and be a part of that as well. Because now our strategies more from an economist base as opposed to a traditional supply aspect of it.
Right. Yeah, so in many ways, it's helping students realize that there is the whole part about preparing them for life ahead, whether that's college or the workforce, but also developing their minds. So they, anybody has the capacity for true intellectual curiosity.
Absolutely.
Not everybody maybe become a college professor or a superintendent of schools, but there really is a natural curiosity of what it means to be a human being and to be really connected and engaged in the world around you.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple months ago, I had a meeting with my administrators, and we differentiated the difference between preparing students for a good life or a good living. And when you prepare them for a good life, that means college readiness. That means work readiness skills that we have to address. Not just from just the core academic, i.e. college readiness component, but you have to be able to have that interface between both of them and having a true intentional design within the organization that focuses on college and preparing our students for a career and for them to develop those skills to be successful within their career. I think that will be just a huge accomplishment for the school system in totality.
Well, it's time for another short break. You're listening to Middlesex Moments, more with Dr. Michael Connor, Superintendent of Schools for the City of Middletown, when we come back. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College. This is Steve Minkler, and I've been speaking today with Dr. Michael Connor, Superintendent of Schools for the City of Middletown. Before the break, we were talking about student agency and having students really understand what their voice is as students, but certainly as members of a community. And we are recording this program shortly after the most recent tragic school shooting in our country at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And I think the lesson for many of us in education is how articulate these students are. In terms, they understand their role as students, but they've taken this tragedy and turned it into political action, the likes we've not seen from young people in a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is great. When we were just discussing about, providing students the necessary agency to articulate their voice with conviction, with facts, and being able to synthesize high-level information is critical. When we go back to the 3 levels of design or literacy development, academic literacy, civic literacy, and occupational literacy, this goes back to civic literacy. Yep. And this is what we want to do. We want to prepare the next generation of students to be able to have a voice, for them to be a part of the societal movement of whatever it may be, from a political context, from an educational landscape, whatever it may be. But it is essentially our job to prepare students to have that voice and to mimic and align that within the broader design of the district as well. So, this is just kind of an overarching focus of where we're going to be moving towards, providing the necessary skills, providing the necessary knowledge for students to be so articulate and to have a critical stance on what they believe in. I'm a huge proponent of that. And I got a young son who's turning 3 within the next 2 months, and I want him, or prepare him, as well as prepare other students to have a voice in society to make the necessary change. I go by this model. It's kind of like my own internal position statement of learn to change the world. And that's what we need to prepare our students, provide the academic designs and environments so they can be able to change the world.
Absolutely. I remember working with a faculty member at a college I worked at before who he himself was a community organizer in the city of Hartford. Taught classes at the college, and he said this was taking the textbooks to the streets.
Absolutely.
And he literally meant taking his students into the communities in Hartford to do work that they needed to do for their class. But I think he also meant it in another way, which is that everything we do is connected. So your life in a classroom is connected to what's happening in your neighborhood and in your community, and even connected to a country maybe halfway around the world.
Absolutely, and this is what you prepare students for. You're doing this at Middlesex Community College. We're going to start emulating that within Middletown Public Schools to be able to have a voice. And learning is not just driven by textbook, but life experiences. And that's what we want to prepare our students, is to prepare them for a broader and better life.
Okay. So let me take you back to the work you're doing at the public school system here in the city of Middletown, and you are embarking on looking at the strategic plan for the school system. How does this roll out? What kind of voices are you getting from your staff, the students, and the community to kind of drive what the future vision is for the city schools?
Yeah, I kind of go by this model with Steve Jobs, right? You don't hire people, you don't hire smart people to direct them, but you hire smart people so they can guide you. So I actually utilized that statement and infused it into the Explore Middletown entry plan. And that's where I'm just listening to voices, identifying specific patterns and themes from multiple stakeholder meetings, whether it be from the community conversations to the school level meetings, and analyzing performance data, using all that information to really drive the strategic plan development. And our strategic planning process is going to start in April. We're going to have representation from community members, from the district, as well as hopefully from our extended partners as well, to be able to be a part of this change movement to drive the direction and the vision for the next 3 years within our first iteration of the plan. It's going to be a rewarding and invigorating process because they're going to develop goals and strategies as well as align those goals and strategies to some of the major or large-scale initiatives that we're going to have in place. So again, we're at the final stages. I got roughly about 87% of the entry plan completed. The entry plan should be completed in totality by the end of March. I plan to give a final report to the Board of Education in April about what are some of the critical patterns and themes that have been identified, and then move into the next step, which is going to be developed in Middletown 2021, Keys to Innovation and Equity. And our position statement is going to be raising the bar for all students.
Awesome. And I'm not asking you to kind of put a stamp on it already, but do you have sort of your own personal view or your personal wish for where you'd like to see the system in 2021 and maybe beyond that?
Yeah. I don't want to put or designate a metric or a benchmark, but I want to see students growing. I want to see our teachers becoming even better teachers. I want to see our leaders becoming even better leaders. And I want to see us, the Board of Education, as well as central office, becoming better. And again, I don't know what that metric looks like, but doing something different, innovative, with a level of coherence and alignment to improve the educational programming for all students.
Yeah. Well, I think a real important message that you're sending there is that you're starting from a worldview of excellence. You're taking something good, making it better, not something that's broken and fixing it.
Right. Middletown Public Schools, we're not a broken entity. I can tell you that. Just like any standard district across America, we can improve. So it's just like what Colin says in his book, we're going to move from good to great, and we're going to be great. And we're already good right now, but I believe with some of these systems and structures that we're going to put in place, and even some enhancement to what we already have within the existing learning organization, we're just going to make it better.
Right. And I think you understand the role of certainly public money. I mean, public schools are funded by city and state taxpayers, but also the role of private philanthropy in a public school system. What prior experience do you have with that, and what do you think you could bring to Middletown?
Yeah, in my previous capacity as Chief Academic Officer, again, kind of go back to what I stated at the outset, within any type of new architecture that you're going to put in place, you have to have partners. And we're going to look to partner with investors. I had some experiences in Norwalk where we were able to bring some good innovation projects as well as some new designs based off of specific philanthropists that contributed to the public schools. So hopefully we'll be able to bring that here. I think we will bring it here, and I'm trying to establish those partnerships right now across the country. So I don't want to solidify anything right now, but right. But I think we're going to be within the next, during the implementation of the strategic plan, I would infer that we would have some extended foundations providing support for our students.
Right. And I think that does kind of tie together what we talked about earlier in today's program about sort of the business approach to it. And there is a systems approach to managing an organization, but also recognizing that business and philanthropists do have an interest in the future of our country and the future of the young people who are in our charge. but they also need to look at results. They're not going to shower us with money if
Yeah.
we're not delivering.
You know, Dr. Minkler, you make a great point because ESSA has new guidelines. And some of the new guidelines talk about fiscal flexibility, efficacy, and evidence for the systems that you're putting in, and what's the highest return of investment based off of your decisions that you're making. So foundations are not going to invest in any school district if there aren't any results. So we're going to, in a copious manner, with a lot of fidelity, to ensure that we're going to generate results, and we'll be able to track that with our own independent academic return of investment analysis that we're going to have internally.
Okay. Well, in the short amount of time we have left, I'm going to put you on the spot real
Yeah.
quick. So imagine you're doing a radio commercial for recruiting new teachers to the Middletown Public Schools.
Yeah.
What would your sales pitch be?
My sales pitch would be, this is a great time to join the public school system if they believe in innovation, if they believe in creativity, if they believe in empowering students, if they believe in challenging themselves and moving from their current state to a desired outcome. This is a perfect time to join the Middletown Public Schools. We're going to eliminate or dismantle monopolies so we can focus on innovative thinking and create high levels of intellectual curiosity with students, as well as with some of our broader leaders and teachers that are in the district.
Okay. Well, I know all of us at Middlesex Community College, but especially me, are fully believe in that same outlook, and we're really proud to be partners with you, with your senior staff, all of your teachers, and the students in the Middletown Public Schools. And it's exciting to embark on a renewed partnership with
Absolutely.
you.
And it's, Dr. Minkler, you're one of the first individuals, stakeholders or leaders that I've met with my transition into Middletown Public Schools. And I want to thank you for reaching out because, again, it's very important when you have community and college partners, and having you in Middlesex as a partner, that's just going to only enhance the experience for our students as well as teachers.
I appreciate that greatly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael Connor, Superintendent of Schools for the City of Middletown, for joining me today.
Absolutely.
And I thank you all for listening to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College. We invite you to visit Middlesex at any time by coming to our main campus at 100 Training Hill Road in the city of Middletown. We also have our Meriden Center located at Platt High School in the city of Meriden, where we offer late afternoon and early evening classes for students from the city of Meriden and beyond. And of course, you can visit us 24/7 at mxcc.edu. So on behalf of my guest, Dr. Michael Connor, and all of us at Middlesex Community College, we thank you for tuning in to Middlesex Moments, and we hope you join us next time.